Welcome to this video. Let's look at another important progression when teaching phonics. I have looked at the first two stages of this progression, phonics sounds, and then reading and writing words, in the previous videos in this series. Though there is, of course, a lot more to learning vocabulary than I have covered in these videos. Vocabulary needs to be constantly reinforced through readers, games that focus on spaced repetition, and listening and writing activities. And I will look at these other aspects of learning vocabulary in separate videos. So what's the next step after words? Sentences. As soon as we can, we need to put words into simple sentences, even if it is just something very simple like, "It's a dog," rather than just "dog." The children can read sentences like this while playing games, or in simple readers. There are some phonics programs that use unnatural sentences just because they are phonically regular, such as Tom and Ted sat, or something like that. I think, at the sentence stage, we can do better than this. When we put words into sentences, I think it is important that the sentences are natural and meaningful. It's also a good idea to introduce a question form as early as possible. I generally introduce a question form like, "What is it?" or "What's she doing?" before the sentences, "It's a dog," or "She's reading," so that the children can ask me questions or ask each other questions instead of me asking them. And they also read and write these questions. When we introduce question forms or try to make sentences more natural, we need to sometimes introduce phonically irregular words. In the early stages, before the children are confident readers, I think we should minimize the number of irregular words. But it sometimes can't be avoided. For example, the word "what" in "what is it" is phonically irregular. If we do introduce an irregular word, it is important that the children encounter the word many times. The children will be using a different reading strategy to read phonically irregular words that depends on seeing words a lot. In the early stages of a phonics program, introducing phonically irregular words without making sure that the children see them a lot can hurt the children's confidence when reading and writing. As soon as the children move beyond basic sentences like, "What is it?" or "It's a dog," the children can personalize sentences when speaking, reading, and writing. This means they make sentences about themselves, their family, their pets, popular characters, famous people they're interested in, a puppet in the classroom, or anything or anybody that the children have an emotional connection with. What's the next step after sentences? What do you think? I think it is paragraphs and dialogues. I mean the term paragraphs loosely. I don't think the children need to properly structure a paragraph yet. At this stage, a paragraph is really just a series of connected sentences. Something like this. Notice that this is phonically regular, except for words that the children see a lot, like "I." It also may contain some new words that the children can decode. They can also personalize it. A child might say, "Hello, I'm Jin-suk. I'm a girl. I'm not a banana. I'm not a table. I'm not a monster," etc. The more serious children may use more serious words, and the less serious children may try to give crazy examples, which is great. They can also write a personalized version of the paragraphs, possibly for homework. So, in this way, starting from a phonically regular reading passage, all 4 skills are integrated. They are hearing, speaking, reading, and writing the sentences. And this leads to deeper learning. Dialogues can also be used as reading activities. Something like this. One way of approaching the dialogue is for the children to first read it. They decode it and guess words that they don't know, and then do a communication activity with it. Reading the dialogue first, trying to puzzle it out, and maybe struggling with it a bit, and possibly getting some help from the teacher's hints. But finally succeeding by decoding it can give the children a feeling of ownership for the language in the dialogue. At first they didn't understand, but they tried, and they succeeded. The feeling of ownership they get from this is likely to carry over to the communication activities and make them feel more involved in the activities. An alternative, which uses the same kind of idea, is for the children to read songs before singing them. The children first read the song, try to decode it, maybe struggle with it a bit, but succeed. And the feeling of ownership they get from this can also lead to them being more engaged when singing the song, and even after the song, when they're doing follow-up activities. So what's the next step? I think it is short reading passages leading into longer stories. I don't mean we can't use stories before this, but the ones before this that are decodable tend to be rather simple. One kind of story that is often used when learning phonics is where the story is used for reinforcing or learning particular phonics families. Here's an example. This story is used for the R and OW phonics families. So it contains many examples of words from these phonics families. There are many phonics readers like this that have very short passages and only contain a few examples of words from a phonics family. But I think it is a lot more effective to have reading passages, as in this example, where there are many words from those families. These kinds of readers are not just for reading words the children already know. There may be words in the story that the children don't know yet. After they decode them, they will probably wonder what they are, and, if necessary, the teacher can give hints to help them discover the meaning. Another kind of phonics reading passage or story is one where the focus is more on context rather than the particular phonics families, but which is generally appropriate for the children's English ability, and where new words are decodable. This is the final stage in preparing the children to read general stories for meaning. This is an example of the kind of simple story or reading passage that can be used at first. These phonics-based stories gradually become longer and more difficult. so they provide an effective stepping stone towards reading stories that are not phonics-based. I think it helps to bring stories to life if it is easy to personalize them. The aim is to bring a story out of the book. In this case, the children can personalize the story by saying things like, "Hello, I'm Abdul. I live in Alexandria. Alexandria is not the capital of Egypt," and so on. At first, I like to use reading passages about children from various countries around the world. One reason is that it can stimulate the children's interest in those countries, and this can lead on to other activities and projects related to those countries. Another reason is that if we use stories about children in other countries that focus on normal everyday things, not on making another country look exotically different, it encourages the children to see the children in another country as being similar to them. When they personalize the story, they are making the same kinds of sentences and saying the same kinds of things as the children in another country that they are reading about. Here is another example at a higher level. You will see that it is decodable, except for a few very common words that the children will have seen many times by this stage. The sentences are also very personalizable. I don't mean to imply that all the children need to go through lots of systematic steps before they are ready to read stories, where the focus is on meaningful context. They can read this kind of story whenever they are ready. I'm just looking at the underlying achievable sequence that builds confidence and ensures that almost all the children, even those who are weaker at reading, can reach the stage of reading stories for meaning. The children can and should read as much as possible, and read for pleasure, using a more top-down approach at any stage of phonics if they are ready to do this. How soon they can do this is related to factors like how old they are, how immersed they are in English, and whether they use the Roman script in their own native language. What I'm suggesting is that we introduce phonics through a sequence where each step follows on naturally from the previous step. At every stage, we focus on building skills rather than on inputting bits of knowledge. And the children develop these skills through engaging activities. And I will look at a wide range of engaging activities for learning phonics in other videos. Thank you very much for watching.